intervention. I remember the first time that we had a double, a two STEMIs in a row.
Yeah.
They just turned up in A&E, and it was a PCI day, and it was like the centre's becoming a PCI centre. It's crazy how much work is coming in for this service, and now they've built a whole new hospital.
Yeah.
And to take the acute work, which they needed because it was just coming in the door at the Gwent. So yeah, I loved Swansea.
Hello, welcome, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are in the world. This is the Study Success Blueprint. Hello, my name is Matthew Mace. This is the Study Success Blueprint. I'm here with Dr. Chris Monkhouse, the clinical device lead at St. Bartholomew's Hospital in London. Hey, Chris.
Hey, Matt. How are you doing today?
I am doing wonderful. Chris, now we start each of these podcasts out. It's very simple questions. What is exciting you in medicine these days?
I think the innovations that are coming within personalized medicine. So either that's technology, AI, or workflows to try and get the most out of the technology for the individual patient. We're finding so many different variables that are impacting people after the foundations of the research that's come in over the last sort of like 20, 30 years. You're starting to see that foundation really start to become more personalized rather than a broad, we should have this tablet for somebody with this heart condition. It's now becoming, okay, well, to get the best out of it, you should have this with this exercise program. And we need to figure out your risk stratification for all these different variables and how that can be dynamically changing. So yeah, I think there's a lot around those three elements.
Personalized medicine is great and wonderful, but nobody can do it alone.
Totally.
What is your collaboration like with industry, with your colleagues at other hospitals these days?
Yeah, so loads of different services have come up for my collaborations with colleagues over different workflows for when patients have specific events. So one of them, as an example, was when people have a fast heart rhythm from the bottom chamber that can be life-threatening. It's called VT. And what you do when the patient has that and how you manage that. And we were able to personalize the workflow for the way that the patient came in to how we were able to see them more effectively and efficiently, and then be able to give them the best care. And actually the outcomes were really good and reassuring that actually we were able to really reduce their incidence and hopefully would have really increased their quality of life. But the way that sort of combines with the technology that's with the patients is the technology is advancing so that you can be reducing the amount of complications to try and get the most benefit for the patients. Because everything is a risk reward or a risk benefit, right?
Yeah.
A lot of my core principles around healthcare are what is your risk benefit? And actually, if you can shift the risk, which is what medtech are really doing right now, is reducing the risk and trying to maximize the benefit so that you can have more access to people. So that because if you can reduce the risk of if they were 20 years ago, quite risky procedures, you can really make a bigger impact on the much larger population.
How do you get to those personalized methodologies? What's the study process, or is it just you still guess and hope?
One of the things that I found really supportive over what the work I've been doing is there is actually quite a lot of support in the system if you know how to find it. So trying to understand clinical trials, if that is a prospective registry, and particularly in an environment like the NHS, there's a wealth of data there. It's being able to know how to access it, where to get the most out of it. And if you can have the analytical skills, there's a huge amount that can be learned if you can just find where the data is so that you can infer or at least be able to find associations that can drive the further clinical trials.
Yeah.
And I think there's an underselling within the healthcare systems across the UK and probably across the world, because actually there's quite a lot of people that could do this, being able to motivate and persist with it, because it's not a quick thing.
Yeah.
Lots of these studies, if you're going to really find something really interesting and learn something, are not going to be a 1 or 2 day job. They're going to be like 6 months, probably minimum, and you got to keep turning up.
Are they knocking your door down to get access to your patients and get access to your data? Or is that actually 10 years ago, no one cared and now they're doing that? Like, what's the dynamic there?
Everybody definitely is. I think we're lucky being in East London. We've got a hugely diverse population, but also with the largest heart centre in Europe. And so from a device perspective, we have been working as a unit very hard on trying to get the best data that we can get so that we can learn about ourselves. But that in turn means that the data is really helpful for industry.
Mhm.
So an example of that is product reporting.
Yeah.
We are analyzing a standard that I'm really proud of from some of the team. They created a mechanism and workflow for being able to record complications more accurately. And we were able to compare ourselves for our standard of practice to randomized control trials that have people paid to go and monitor the conditions and the complications. And we're now reporting at the same level. So I know now our data is good enough. And that's something that is quite exceptional on such a large scale. So it becomes really helpful for industry to learn from. And we have got partnerships
Mm.
that we're using and trying to bring stuff back into the healthcare system to try and sort of make life better for the patients who data that is all about.
Mhm. Over the past decade, there's been a bit of a brain drain from the health service. How have you tackled getting good quality researchers and enthusing your junior staff members about research?
I think it's one of the best things about being a large service is and generally the way that we've done this is we've given people the opportunity to share the experience. So we will always be trying to get people at conferences. We'll be looking to engage with industry so that they can help support that, if not charities within the organization, or even just have our own budgets allot people so that we can go to these conferences. We plan them at the beginning of the year. We have like a meeting with we have an educational lead and we go, okay, well, we want to be targeting these conferences. We want to get these people to them. If we need to submit, we need people looking to collect data by X date. So you're planning for it in advance. There's a lot of structure that goes into it. And at that point, when you put out a message to the group, they'll come through and say, yeah, well, I'm interested in this project. And you go, okay. So I've been really trying to academically supervise people, provide them the motivation, because sometimes the key framing is what's the research question? What are you trying to answer? And what can people learn from? And for me, that's how you motivate people into research, is giving them something back so that they can feel the benefit of it, not just writing a report internally. You want to be changing practice and you want to be able to share that experience.
And it's a bit of a flywheel effect, because once you start doing research, you realize it's not that hard.
Yeah.
And then you publish something or you put something at a conference, and then that gives you the perpetual motivation.
Yeah. Well, it did definitely for me. For me, it definitely did. As soon as I published my first paper, I wanted another one. When I presented my first abstract or my first case report, I was like, okay, I want to be able to present more and share the experience. And so even some of the feedback I've had about my paper, like positive or negative, I've actually then ended up helping the work. It's one of the things I've really enjoyed being a reviewer. When you're reviewing the articles, you're critically appraising it and you're suggesting changes. And if they come back, the changes can make the research really quite powerful
Yeah.
and give it some really good poignance to be able to be used in the future. And that's the thing that I value about being a reviewer, is actually seeing good research come out.
Linking to your earlier point, the trap with research as well is that it's going to take time,
Mhm.
and you can't just Claude code your way through it in 30 minutes.
Totally not.
And even when you think it's finished, it's never done.
Yeah.
You've got some great papers out recently.
Thanks.
What has kept you in that line of research?
But you almost have to define a point in time and then go, okay, and then how long is this going to be relevant for? Particularly with the technology changing, is there's one article that I've been drafting right now, and there is studies that are going to be released in the next major conferences that we expect will probably change practice. So if we released a paper to this month or next month, it'll be out of date by June, July. And at that point, you're like, okay, well, we know that there are the results coming. So because we were a part of the studies, we can see the studies registered on trials.gov. So we know that they're coming soon. So we can wait for them so that we can actually be really current. If not, you can end up being out of date really quickly. And it's the same with technology. And then when you're trying to compare technologies, it becomes really challenging because you can end up comparing against old versions where the main studies were based on, but the newer technologies act very differently or they're improved. So the risk benefit has changed
Yeah.
from the initial outset. But it's really quite expensive to run some of these trials. So you want to be able to cover as much longitudinal data as you can in those studies. So that's where like post-market surveillance data, particularly on new releases, I think is so important to get good quality post-market surveillance because you can actually track that change. But then getting it out and published,
Yeah.
I think is the bit that maybe is missing sometimes,
Yeah.
where actually there's reports that are done that have to be done, but some of the sort of more clinical nuances would actually, I think, could be really valuable to see the change over time. That's what I'd like to see maybe a little bit more of because the data's already there. It's
Yeah.
already being collected. So it's just having the sort of outside expertise come in to be able to produce the manuscript.
Yeah.
Um,
I think the EMA building used to be two buildings from here, right? So post market surveillance is key. And I remember working at St Jude. There's some really compelling data that people don't know about, and because it's collected by the company, it's also invalid. Like
yeah.
it seems weird that that's still a concept. So if your study was supported by industry, is it less science?
It's such a challenge when it comes to bias because there's and it depends on the transparency of the data that's out there. It's one of the things why I think that something like the FDA analysis databases of MAUDE are super transparent. And it's really helpful because you could just go on any product in the world and just look at effectively how it's affected it in the US. But then you have no denominator. When we know the companies will have the denominator of that so that they know how many this is relevant for. So I think there's a huge lot to be learned now. Whether you can have the companies produce this data and it be almost given enough of a reassurance from independence to be able to be respected, I think is challenging. I think one of the things that I've learned about research particularly when it comes to industry and research is definitely the marketing of research. There's a whole arm of marketing and research that I think is really interesting because the way that the research then becomes like marketed. If it's put in like something, you could get it into a really big paper and then it's on every single poster from one company, or it's on an advert that goes on LinkedIn that everybody sees. Your research is now seen all over the world. But if it's in a journal that's maybe a bit different, that's maybe slightly lower impact factor, and it's not caught up by a marketing message that happens to be going on at that company at that time, the people that will read it are the people that you know, the people that you send it to, or maybe somebody who's going for a look at it. There's so much research out there. It's really quite hard to every month. Like I get a paper copy of Heart Rhythm, and that would be a good 2 days solid read if you were to read the whole thing.
Yeah.
Like it's thick. Like, I can't tell you how many pages of it, but there's at least 20 papers.
Yeah.
If you really want to take your time, like I just skip through all the device ones because I haven't got time to read all the EP ones. I'll just read the titles.
Yeah.
Just I think something I've learned about my own research is, and probably my biggest advice to people who are writing papers and even abstracts now is this: you start with what do people see, and people will see the title.
Mm-hmm.
So if you see the title, it needs to be like a 1-sentence conclusion of your paper. So if all they read is the title, they can at least learn something. If they can, then they'll go to the abstract. If they're interested, they'll go to the abstract. And if they're really interested, they'll read the whole paper.
There's so much research that's around there that we can't read everything. And, the amount of journals is growing.
Yeah.
How did you become intrigued about research?
So my undergrad degree in Swansea, working across the whole of South Wales over different periods over 4 years, I really enjoyed doing my dissertation. That was a focus on ICD defibrillator programming and in specific niche populations. And that kind of helped my sort of foundation of understanding literature reviews. After I'd got a real foundation in understanding the technology, started reading papers about obscure cases and then found one, showed it to a consultant, which is Tony Chow. Tony was just like straight away asking me the questions I needed to answer with this, like who does it impact and how do we learn from it? And I was like, but it's really cool. I can't learn from it's really cool, even though it is really cool.
Mhm.
I'm not downplaying that. So we got that case report out, found a few other obscure cases, did those, moved on to case series, did a few case series, one which ended up being a problem on a defibrillator lead, which we published in 2019, started collecting data in probably 2018, which is now the foundation of a worldwide product advisory, which back then we thought, oh, this could be that. So we'll put an early sign out. And I remember having people across the world contact me about this paper
Mhm.
because they hadn't seen this issue. And we were the only paper that described a management plan for it
Yeah.
to practically manage it and also come up with a theory for why it was there. From that onto sort of retrospective analysis of cohorts, which then led me into my PhD, where we did retrospective analyses and did a random good risk control trial, which is a huge ordeal, but is very doable. It just, I think from the first time you do it, it feels like there's a lot, particularly because it's a lot more project management to start. And there's a lot of regulatory hoops to go through, which aren't, there is a necessity to them. But going through all those is definitely something I learned a hell of a lot from. And then, yeah, that culminated last week with my Viva defense. Thanks, which went very well. A really good experience for me. But I felt like because I'd managed over the past three years, been able to get a lot of the papers out at conferences. I'd had a lot of discussions about the articles anyway, and some actually really good things that ended up, or comments that ended up going into other parts of the research to try and take it on further. So yeah, I've really enjoyed the journey, but I remember the first case report I wrote took me 6 months.
Mhm.
It was 1,000 words, but it took me 6 months to get it there. And I remember I'm a bit of a morning person. I would get up and I would work from 5 till 7 before I left to work on the paper and trying to collect everything I could. And then reading. I think this is the thing that I probably learned a little bit about when I was doing my undergrad, but through my doctorate, I want to say I've read every paper on ICDs up and when I was doing my literature review. That meant that I felt like I could really understand the data and the limitations of the data set, which are quite compelling when you can start spotting them in the method sections and ignore the results and the introduction, just go straight to the methods and you can see what people did and how they got there.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah, I've really loved it.
So I was just doing a quick maths. You did 5.5 words a day on that 1,000-word.
Yeah, probably about that. It was nuts.
You said something that's quite interesting. Who does this help? How does it help
Yeah.
my practice? I mean, for me, that's always the reason why you keep going.
Yeah.
How does that change how you think about research and writing a case report? I mean, you could just write a case report about any old that happened in the hospital, right? But
Yeah.
does it help anyone?
No, exactly. It's the learning points from it and how you can translate that. There's actually loads of scenarios that people are going in day-to-day practice that should be shared. So I think one of the things that if you're in clinical practice or even if you're in industry, if you hear of those stories, you need to capitalize on those stories. And that's either just by writing them down. I used to have a log of all the interesting cases that I'd ever seen. I'd email myself so that I had them in case I wanted them. What was the story about it? And then I would tell people in industry if it was a feature on their device that did really good. So what? It's understanding that some of these things can happen and where they can happen, how you can impact them. And if you know about these things, you definitely start seeing them more.
Yeah, yeah. So expanding people's mind that things can happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't know, we've been in the same same industry for a bit, whether it's a patient has a severe disorder
Hmm.
and they get a regular pacemaker and then they suddenly die because something was missed,
Yep.
right? That education at the local levels, at all levels, I think is interesting.
No.
Can that be done more than just through papers? Is it storytelling? Is it being on LinkedIn? Is it
So one of the things that's probably the most challenging is for these sort of stories is having, I would say, the bravery, but and also the honesty to be able to share them. Because I think that's one of the things that I've always been supportive of for our team since I became the clinical lead as well, was these are the sort of scenarios that we can't just shy away and not tell people about, particularly when things don't go as well as we hoped. Can people learn from them? Yes, because they will happen again. And the only way the technology and the whole healthcare system go forward is if we learn from our mistakes. It's one thing that the aviation industry does so well is if there is a problem or a fault, they figure it out exactly what it was and then they build the systems around to stop it from happening. But within healthcare, I think there is a challenge that the way that the systems are overburdened is that sometimes that feedback loop isn't as robust. I think in some areas it definitely is, but trying to understand all of these things and having the bravery to be able to share them with other people, people should. And it definitely will help everyone. And all in all, the underpinning thing is it helps the patients.
Yeah, there's a bit of stigma about sharing a bad story. How do you stop your staff from feeling it's their fault when bad things happen? Like, bad things will happen. You'll
Yeah,
make a
yeah.
mistake.
There's a few elements to that. So there's one supporting the individual, and then also trying to figure out a system, systematizing the whole thing so that it's not one individual's reasoning or thought or the fact that they had a bad day is shouldn't be the thing that causes that to be the problem. So we have that through lots of different mechanisms, either via our SOPs to try and make sure that everything's standardized and, and guides, a lot of education to try and keep people current. And then QA, which is something that seems to miss sometimes because I think we've underappreciated in other areas of business of the world. QA is like a standard thing,
Yeah.
but in healthcare, it's less structured because a lot of the time it's just never been there. And there's an expectation, but building that in can really help give people the feedback to actually continue on the growth.
Yeah. Those random audits, it's not about you, it's about learning about the process, right?
Yeah.
We spoke before we came on here about, tapes,
Yeah.
Holter monitoring, I remember being audited.
Yeah.
Did you get the report right? Not to get told off, but as a learning opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are you trying to find those opportunities, for your team?
Oh yeah, totally. I think we've got a fantastic QA lead that's come in, and it's definitely opened up the learning for where people are struggling with X. We need to deliver the education. Can we get everybody there in one go? No. Okay, let's phase that in over multiple sessions so that we can catch everybody and do one to ones or anywhere on anyone that seems to be particularly struggling with it. So giving them, empowering them so that they can actually do it better. So yeah, I think it's a real challenge to not to just point the finger because it naturally ends up being that way. There's an overarching responsibility of the system, which I think is where I've definitely felt, and I know that other senior clinical leads feel, is they have the overarching responsibility, which is where you can't physically see everybody. So you have to rely on other people because when that comes to technology, you produce a product that you want people to go and use exactly how you've designed it. And if they don't, they can have outcomes that might not be what you want. So how do you empower people, make sure that people use it in the way that you want them to?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm very passionate about that side of research, which is how do people use it?
Hmm.
And you only know how people use it by observing what has happened.
Yeah,
So I view mistakes as a natural part of learning.
yeah,
And, what I do in my business is, we try to help entrepreneurs speak to clinicians and say, how do you use this or what happened? Or, we worked with someone recently for a product improvement that had a lot of field safety alerts for their device, or
Uh-huh.
more alerts for the device. Why was this happening? Rather than just going, oh, I'm going to improve the IFU and say use it like this.
Yeah.
Actually, it required a redesign of the system, right?
Uh-huh.
If you're not intrigued about learning the answer, you'll just use only sticks to push people in the right direction.
Yeah, yeah. That mentality is such a forward-thinking mentality that then you can even, to try and get confidence, because some people then might lose confidence because of that particular field safety notice. If you have an action plan, put it out there, you then have an understanding, a deep understanding of the fix. And the fix is a hell of a lot more reassuring.
Mhm.
And I've definitely found that through different products where we know that there's been a change. We have so much more reassurance in the newer technology,
Yeah.
and we can be fully on board with the different tech and understand the mechanism is now not there
Yeah.
from the previous fold. And we know how to use it better.
Yeah. You understand the first principles by doing a bit of education, take an extra 5 minutes to
Mm.
explain this failed because of this. We did X to fix it. That's important. Sort of seeing the methodology behind that, right? I think it's definitely helpful.
Yeah, yeah.
So what's next for you?
Where I see myself, I think the experience of being a clinical lead and seeing about how systems affect devices and technology, I think I still love the academic side, particularly with some of the projects that we started doing on the newer versions of technology that are coming out and that are going to emerge and how best to use them. So I'm going to hopefully carry on doing quite a bit of academic work. I've accidentally, I kind of like to say yes to people. I think I might have taken on about 7 students to supervise in my sort of postdoctoral time, but they're all very enthusiastic, and some of the projects hopefully can be really, really helpful for people, particularly on the personalized medicine front. Then I'm looking at sort of trying to help advise industry, particularly startups, but also larger organizations, really on how to make the most out of the technology, particularly some of the niches that I've been involved in, but also understand more about how you can take a product and actually turn it into an easy workflow that goes through not just what the outcome of the technology is meant to be, how people can then use it, and then the reimbursement programs that are built around it to bring the value to the patient.
Mhm.
All in all, I want to find all the tech that I can and all the systems I can that can improve the risk benefit.
What do you think those early stage companies miss now? What do they get wrong?
I think one of the biggest challenges is understanding what actually help is going to affects the clinicians. One end from a healthcare perspective, as in from the healthcare side. The other side of healthcare is the patient side. That is there because the patient is the buyer. They're the one that ends up using it, but they're not the person that uses it. It's the healthcare system that uses it for them.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I think can be missed sometimes is the scope of not just the doctor and the buyer or the procurement department in whatever organization it is, but also how it affects the patient. Because you want to have the technology easy for the patient to be able to use. There's an organization called Dodgy Tickers in East London. Fantastic organization.
Dodgy Tickers.
Dodgy Tickers,
Okay.
mate. They honestly phenomenal organization.
The proper East London name.
It is honestly, and I'd love to. Next time we play football again, we play football against them. Doctors versus patients. Awesome game. I did happen to score, and I realised as well. I run really funny. I really struggle with with running, but yeah, the seeing them for me was so powerful when they came up and talked to us, and we were chatting to them afterwards. Some of the technology that they were using to like monitor their own conditions, I'd never heard of it, but it was so empowering for them to feel safe.
Mhm.
And I was like, okay, these are elements of technology that we're not thinking about because we're thinking about our internals, and we're all trying to help with the outcomes, but the patients sometimes don't necessarily know that that's happening for them.
Yeah.
So providing them with feedback, and then even then with clinicians getting feedback, I think that's something that can sometimes be missed on the benefits of what you're providing people. I was at a session, a psychology session for people with defibrillators, and honestly, it was one of the most powerful moments
Mhm.
is seeing how it literally changed these people's lives for the good. And I think it's probably one of the most motivational things to do everything that we just said
Mhm.
is when you actually start seeing people who actually wouldn't have been there if the system hadn't done things for them. And seeing that on an individual person level is really powerful.
Yeah,
I went off on a tangent. Yeah.
yeah. No, but I mean, it's important. We become very myopic as developers
Hmm.
about what people would tolerate. I'll use a story from a device company that I was co-founder of. We wanted to record heart sounds for 5 minutes. It turned out patients didn't want to do that.
Hmm.
Like, it's but it would give us the best data, and we
Yeah.
sort of miss the whole healthcare system process.
Yeah.
Like, how should someone approach understanding healthcare if they're not part of it?
You have to engage with people that have got the experience, for one, but also the experience of having experiences of all the way through the chain. I think one of the things I'm I am a cardiac patient. I have got a cardiac device in me, and that for me, I can put a different hat on and go, I know what it's like to be the end user because I've been an end user for the last 18 years, that I can feel what it's like to be along the whole journey. And that sort of translates that there isn't many people that can develop a device, have a device, and you know how to use the device. But you can't just find all of those sort of like people who can do all of them. I'd like to think I'm one of those people that can do all of those things. But there is if you can engage people, there are people that are willing to share their experiences and help you learn those. And there are loads of organizations out there for the patient side of things.
Yeah.
Then there are organizations out there that can engage with clinicians. There are clinicians out there that are looking for this sort of engagement. You will find somebody who will
Yeah.
be really helpful and really engage with you but it's just trying to find that person in the right point of their life and sometimes even the right day of the week.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I definitely say to people, like innovators come to me and say, "Hey, I want to find a nephrologist to go speak to." Tried to contact this guy. This guy or girl won't respond to you because they're running a huge service.
Yeah, yeah.
But there's colleagues. There's lots of people you can speak to. There's 19 million physicians in the world, right?
Yeah.
Like you can find one physician. Yes, maybe you're not going to find, a doctor physiologist who has a device all in one person, but you can find all of those subsets of people.
Totally. It's there's a lot of persistence in that, but it's just putting it out there
Yeah.
is the thing that you kind of got to do, and kind of take the risk of talking to these people because sometimes it can feel like, oh well, if I tell them this, then they're gonna go away and do it because they're the doctor they're the one that will be like a buyer in the end, and they're gonna have their own network. But you kind of have to share it
Yeah.
to make it happen. I think that's the thing. One of the things that I've learned with my engagements with some of the med tech that I've been involved with is you kind of have to put yourself out there, particularly when you're coming up with new technologies.
Yeah.
There's loads of opportunity out there, but you just don't know it's there. You don't know
Yeah.
what you don't know.
Yeah, yeah. And you don't know if you don't share.
Totally.
And that's the point. You may know someone who may know something, but until you send that LinkedIn message or you send the text, you have no idea.
Yeah.
And I think it's great speaking to someone like you. You've got that experience, but that experience didn't take 1 year. It's taken a decade
Yeah.
of accumulation, and there's lots of things you still don't know.
Totally. And so I think that's the thing I'm most excited about after my PhD is learning all this other stuff.
Yeah.
Like I'm so been drawn into understanding regulatory science and regulatory pathways because I've definitely been working on a lot of clinical application data, which is more sort of like not early stage regulatory data, but because that's a whole different arm of research. It's not the same for writing for a publication in writing for regulatory. You have to have a completely different spin on the perspective, but it's another art form. And I also I get obsessed with topics
Yeah.
and just want to dive into them, which I don't know, is a positive. It's one of those things when you're in an interview and you say, "Oh, it's one of my positives and my negatives."
Yeah. What drives that curiosity though?
I think one of the things that for me it's my personal experience within healthcare But also, I think my natural personality is one of the things that I've really tried to embrace over the last 3 years. Is after I did this, I read a book, Surrounded by Idiots.
Oh yeah.
Read it on plane, and I was like, oh my God, I understand. I feel like I understand people so much more, and also understood myself and what my limitations were.
Mm.
But it's being able to understand what is it in within your personality traits to be able to leverage yourself to get the most out of this is for anyone, but to get the most out of it.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that's the thing that I'm now looking at for when I'm working with people now is I want people to be working complementary to me.
Mhm.
I know where my limitations are and I know what I don't do as well naturally.
Yeah.
And of having other people that are bouncing off you to be able to complement that and don't see it as a negative. Like
Yeah.
you want them to be able to work in the gaps that you have.
I say this to founders and entrepreneurs all the time, which is, you have to know yourself and you have to know what you're not good at,
Hmm.
but you can't say, "Oh, I'm never going to learn this."
Totally.
You just go out and go, I'm not very naturally gifted in this area. I'm going to hire you, Chris, to help me, but I'm also going to learn from you." It's not just outsourcing and hoping that you do a good job. It's also, learning from you and being inquisitive, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Totally is. I think wanting to learn about yourself, how your own mind works, for me, it's been so freeing to be able to understand myself and even how my emotions will affect me at different times, I think has really grounded me.
Mhm.
I spent a lot of work on that over the last sort of like year and a half. And it definitely has given me a different balance in life, but also in the way that I can then make decisions and work clinically and critically.
Mhm.
And I think this, it's just being open to be able to understand that these sort of, particularly when you're confronted with a book like Surrounded by Idiots, you can think, oh, okay, well this won't work, this doesn't work, and actually go, okay, well it's not an exact science, like, but there's a fair bit of science actually behind it
Mhm.
that's pretty good, but take it with a pinch of salt and just watch it slowly interact with you, and then I found it's been transformationary in a work perspective.
Mhm. Mhm. So, look, I really appreciate the time. It's been
Thanks.
so good. What is next? What is next on the list?
I'm trying to get as much research out there in before I sort of transition to hopefully a new role and a new consulting business alongside postdoctoral work, carrying on at Barts actually. So that's I think a lot core of my time is still going to be spent doing the academic work because I just can't let it go, and I love seeing it happen and supporting people. That's where I'm most excited for
Yeah.
in the coming months.
I think being altruistic as you move up that knowledge graph and you go, "Oh, I've learnt this," and sort of brings it full circle. The ability to do research or the ability to grow as a person is to then impart that knowledge onto someone else.
Totally. I think that's one of the things that I definitely want to do over the coming years is really harness that so that people can make them. I think particularly in the profession that we've come from in cardiac physiology, which is a job that I'm sure most people who are listening to this would have never heard of. It only exists really in the UK, Ireland, and Australia and New Zealand. But a, hu- there's so much wealth in so many healthcare disciplines and so much knowledge that's there. And I really want to empower anyone. I can take so much from the nurses that we've worked with, from the doctors, registrars, consultants. Everyone has got value to
Mhm.
give. It's just understanding where that is, and most people just don't know because they don't know.
Yeah, yeah. That's a great sentiment to sort of, leave it on, which is, every healthcare professional from to the top and the bottom, and that's even a wrong phrase to say, is
Yeah,
everyone has value, everyone adds to the patient's journey.
yep,
I think it's key to learn if you want to go build something, if you want to research something, you need to engage with everyone and
yeah,
not just think about Herr Professor.
yeah, yeah. It's crazy how much could happen due to one admin person going off sick for a month, and it railroads your whole study because of that person wasn't there and the replacement person didn't do it. So understanding how a whole healthcare system affects your product and your design and how you're going to be going forward. And leveraging them all can really make a difference when you've got all of that built into the system that you're trying to implement.
I really appreciate it, Chris. It's
Absolute
been
pleasure.
wonderful.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
I enjoyed that. I love speaking to Chris anytime we meet up. If you enjoyed that, please like and subscribe at wherever you listen to podcasts. Go ahead, listen to our back catalogue of some insane researchers over 2025. We've got a chock-a-block schedule for 2026 and looking forward to seeing you then. So with that, I can leave you today. Speak to you very soon. I've been Matthew Mace, and this is the Study Success Blueprint.
All right, sweet. To be fair, I'm getting hungry. Doesn't matter. Yeah, probably the thing that people learn about most from me.
Is that Chris is always hungry.
Chris can get hungry.
So we want to hire Chris, make sure there's lunch provided.
If he's fed all the time, and then I'm always doing better.
I failed. It's 12 o'clock and I don't have any snacks.
No, you're fine. Well, luckily, we're in an area that has substantial resource around it.
Anything, Canary Wharf does have that.